Okay. Well, welcome everyone to CitSciOzOnline, Oz Online, the Connections and Partnerships session brought to you by the Australian Citizen Science Association. My name's Stephanie Von Gavel. I'm the Vice Chair of ACSA, and I suppose on behalf of the committee, we'd really like to welcome you all to this session. We're really looking forward to it, and I hope all of you have actually had the opportunity to participate in some of our previous sessions, and then we've got sort of one more session coming up as well. I'd first also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're all meeting on today, or here in Canberra, where I'm calling in from. It's the Ngunnawal people, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging as well, and recognise their continuing connection to sort of land, water and community. And I'd like to pay our respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that may be with us today as part of this session. One of the things I'd first like to do as well is take a few moments to thank our sponsors, without which this CitSciOzOnline wouldn't be possible. It's very important for ACSA to have these types of partnerships with sponsors to enable us to do our work. One of our first sponsors actually is the Theo Murphy Initiative, which is part of the Australian Academy of Science, and they support events for early and mid-career researchers. And you would have seen one of our first sessions that Alice coordinated that was a good example, was actually mainly supported by the Theo Murphy Initiative. We also have the Minderoo Foundation and their Fire and Flood Resilience Initiative. They've sponsored ACSA as well more broadly, and this session too, or this event as well. The Minderoo Foundation is a philanthropic organisation that's looking at those tough and persistent issues that can drive massive change. We also have the Environment Institute from University of Adelaide, and the Environment Institute brings together leading research groups at the University of Adelaide in the fields of science, engineering and economics relating to the management and use of natural resources and infrastructure. And finally, the Australian Museum, Australia's first museum, and their Centre for Citizen Science that provide a really important source of data about biodiversity. You would have be familiar with Digivol and Frog ID that come out of the museum as well. Just to give a few housekeeping things, if you could all keep your microphones off or on mute. From a bandwidth perspective, sometimes also keeping your videos off. We also have Laura, who's supporting us with the technical. She'll be able to mute everybody as well. The idea too is that we might hold all our questions towards the end, and please, in the meantime though, add your questions into the chat function, and Alice and others will be monitoring that, and we can ask those questions to the speakers at the end of the session. We're also recording this session, and we're going to make available that recording on YouTube. So if you don't wish to be filmed, then just make sure you keep your video and microphone off for the entire session so that you remain anonymous as well. So, and as part of this too, we have a code of conduct that you may have seen, and just, I suppose the main thing is to be kind and respectful to one another and speakers as we have the session. So thanks very much. I'd just like to, I suppose, start off by providing a bit of short context for our session as we explore this concept of connections and partnerships. In some ways, I was inspired by one of a white paper actually that came out a few years ago now out of the EU that sort of looked at different parts, I suppose, of the citizen science ecosystem from that sort of macro level at policy makers and funders that create that environment and programs that we need that are specific for and acknowledge citizen science. And then you sort of look at that sort of meso, middle level and those are those sort of institutions that help support and drive and mediate citizen science. I suppose ACSA is an example of that, as well as actually a lot of most of the organisations that our speakers are from as well. And they're about sort of connecting across boundaries, creating supporting infrastructures and platforms, and sharing information as well. And then right down to that sort of micro level, those individuals or projects or communities that actually make things happen, and the volunteers that are motivated to give their time. And I suppose this leads us to think about who are the partners that we need, not only to undertake citizen science, but also have that impact and outcomes from that work. And how are those partnerships and connections created and maintained? I mean, there's some of my questions, and I'm hopefully, the speakers will address some of these, but you'll probably also have your own questions. And again, please provide them, in the chat function. I'd also like to mention we have some door prizes or lucky prizes. So we'll be putting up, asking a few questions through the sessions, and if you could sort of your answers, and then we've got some door prizes that we can provide to you as well. So straight on to our speakers. We've got an amazing group of speakers tonight. And I think we'll first start off with Tahlia. She's from the University of Adelaide and the Environment Institute. So I'll hand over to you, Tahlia, and I'll let her introduce herself and her work.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, let me share my screen and get started. Excellent. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about my project. I would like to start by also acknowledging the Kaurna people whose land is that I am on today. And before I get into my presentation, a bit of background about myself. I am actually from a genetics background rather than the, I guess, ecology side of things. But I've always had such a passion for animals and conservation and trying to sort of tie all these different areas together. So I think this collaborations and partnerships session is actually a really good fit for me personally. So to get you into the swing of things about echidnas, I wanted to share a little bit about their amazing biology. So to start, echidnas are seasonal breeders. So you'll only find them in the wild in these groups during breeding season, which happens between June and September every year. And this time of year, you'll see these things called echidna trains, where you'll find this one female leading the train, and then she's followed by all of these males, all trying to compete with her to mate with just her. So these trains can last for several weeks at a time and be incredibly long. And then eventually the female will choose a male to mate with. So after she has fallen pregnant, she does what very few mammals do, and that's lay an egg. So echidnas and platypuses are very notorious for being the only egg-laying mammals in the world. And we are very lucky to have them. And that's only one of the amazing things that we know about their biology. So the baby echidna will stay inside the egg for only 10 days, and then it will hatch. And if you look at your thumbnail right now, that is the size of this baby newborn hatchling echidna. Absolutely tiny, and always remarkable biology that we find out about these guys. So after about a month and a half of being inside of the mother's pouch, it grows up to look a little bit like this, which is, you can see the spines are forming here. So as you can imagine, that wouldn't be very comfortable for the mama echidna to be carrying around this baby anymore. So what she does is she puts it into a nursery burrow, and it stays there for another several months. She only comes back once every 5 days to feed it milk, and then it's old enough to start foraging by itself, and then goes on to make its own little breeding cycle. So even though echidnas are such iconic animals, especially here in Australia, we know very little about their wild populations, and that's because echidnas are really difficult to actually study out in the wild. Which makes it really hard for us then to figure out how they're going and what we can do to help with their conservation. The only well-studied population is the one that is on Kangaroo Island down here. And that is only because of the work by Dr. Peggy Rees-Miller. She has both lived and worked on Kangaroo Island for the past 30 years studying echidnas. And because of her work, we know so much more about their biology, about their natural life history, just like the events that I was talking about earlier. But also we now know that they are endangered. And echidnas on Kangaroo Island face the exact same threats as the rest of Australia. So, you know, there's threats such as feral animals like cats and foxes. They're a massive roadkill issue, as well as just general habitat loss. So we know these things are happening on mainland Australia, but because we don't have the data to support that, they're still listed as least concern, which is an issue for conservation purposes, because if there's no threatened species listing, that means that there's no government support, there's no money that goes into their survival, and no proper conservation management plans developed for them. So we wanted to change that. But how do you get Australia-wide information on an animal that's really difficult to study? And so that's where EchidnaCSI came about. Because basically we were having conversations with people and they were saying that they saw them all the time popping up in their own backyards or when bushwalking. And so we're like, why hasn't anyone collected this data before? Why don't we use the power of thousands of people rather than small research groups trying to gather this sorts of information? So to do this work, we developed an app also called EchidnaCSI for people to download. And so we asked people to do a few things. Firstly is to record a sighting of echidnas wherever they may be. And so because it's through an app, it automatically tracks the date, the time, the location for us. And we also ask a few questions about the action and the biology of the echidna itself. People also have the option to submit old sightings through the app as well, as long as it's been taken through a smartphone device. And lastly, which is I guess the more interesting side of things, is that we also ask people to collect echidna poo for us. There is a very good reason for that. It's not just for the fun of it. And that comes down to my genetics background. So echidna poo, or any animal poo really, has an abundance of DNA and hormones inside of those scat samples, which gives us the opportunity to find out not just about where echidnas are located, but gives us a whole range of information. So for example, from the DNA, we're able to see the DNA from the food that they've eaten. So echidnas are sort of notoriously labeled as ant and termite eaters, but there is some evidence to suggest that they eat quite a range of insects, and not just insects, but also potentially plants and fungi. So we wanted to be able to, I guess, characterize that a little bit more. You can also get the DNA from the echidnas themselves, which then leads to the possibilities of looking at population genetics and how they're related to each other in different areas. There's also the bacteria, the DNA from the bacteria living inside of the echidna's gut. And the microbiome is a very big buzzword at the moment. And so it gives us a lot of information about their biology and their health through looking at the bacteria. And through the hormones, there's actually a lot of hormones that get excreted out into the scats as well. So stress hormones can be measured. So if you've got a high level of cortisol in your scat compared to a normal level, that means that you were pretty stressed. And also you can have a look at reproductive hormones as well. So the field of looking at or using scats as a way to find out more about wildlife isn't a new concept. It's been around for decades, and it has been more and more popular with the genomic tools that are becoming more and more readily available. But putting this into a context of citizen science hadn't really been done before, and so we didn't really know how it would go. It was sort of like let's see if people would collect poo for us and go from there. So now that you know a bit about the structure of the project, I want to introduce you to, I guess, this first level of partnerships and collaborations that has made this possible, and that's across different scientific disciplines. So firstly, my supervisor, Frank Grutzner, he is the leading monitoring geneticist in the world, has been doing some amazing work for the past 15 or so years, especially in terms of things like the Platypus Genome Project. We also have the Echidna genome sequence now that is available for us to look more at a the genetic side of echidnas. And really, when I came to him for my PhD, I was like, I want to do something with mammals and genetics. I like to put a conservation spin on it. And he was like, cool, I haven't done that before, but I want to go into that space. Let's do it. So I think one of the best things that I've learned from him as a supervisor is just following your passions and your interests and finding ways to do it. So we were all going into this very blind, with support from the community, of course, but it really was a let's see and see how it goes, which has worked in our favor. So secondly is Dr. Peggy Rees-Miller. As I mentioned before, she is the leading echidna ecologist, and has been collaborating with Frank for quite a while, and is quite close friends. And so having her on board really makes the links from the genetics and from the molecular biology to the true echidna biology possible. Without her, I wouldn't know half the amount of things about echidnas, because she has just such a wealth of knowledge about just how they work and they run. And lastly is Alan Stenhouse. So he sort of made sure that this project actually got up and running, because he is the one that developed the app for us. So we started this project over 3 years ago. So iNaturalist wasn't really a thing back then. And so having an app that people could actually download and to submit these sightings was incredibly important for us. And he really has driven that and made it possible for us to move forward. So being able to combine these aspects of molecular biology, ecology, and even software and app design has made everything as possible as it has. So to create the buzz for this project, because it is an Australia-wide project, we have leaned very heavily on the media, and the media has also loved us, which has been a really great thing for us. So when we launched the project, we had major news crews come out as to try and get as much coverage of this for Australia-wide as possible. A bit about this day was that we were planning to, so we're recording this at the Adelaide Zoo to try and get some footage of the echidna that lives in the enclosure. And could we find it? No. So they had been there for probably over an hour, and we could not find this echidna anywhere. And it really set up the reason that we really needed the citizen science side of things, because if we can't find an echidna in an enclosure where it's meant to be, we have been struggling a lot out in the wild. So over the past 3 years, I am constantly doing radio interviews. Echidnas, people find echidnas super fascinating, which has made this project as big as it is, which is wonderful, as well as the news articles just continue to come.
Just 2 more minutes, Tahlia. Okay,
all right, I'll go really quickly. Online, we have a lot of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we are in high contact with our citizen scientists, and also in-person talks we give a lot of. So secondly, obviously the partnership is with the citizen scientists themselves. So they have made a world of difference for us being able to do the science that we're doing right now. So EchidnaCSI has been had over 10,000 app downloads, and we're coming up to 10,000 sightings and have over 500 scats collected for us. So these are the sightings of the echidnas that have come in so far. As you can see, it is a lot more around heavily human populated areas, which is what we sort of expect to happen with a citizen science project. But the most remarkable thing is the location of the echidna scats. So I reiterate that there is absolutely no way that we would be able to collect these sorts of specimens in these types of locations, especially in a 3-year PhD project, let alone then building up the methods to actually look at the DNA. So from over the past couple of years, we have been able to show that we can get good quality DNA from these citizen science collected scats. And it has allowed us to actually look at the DNA inside of the scats to look at the diets across different habitats. And we have been the first to be able to characterize the wild echidna microbiome. And what that means is that we have now also been allowed or able to look at things like impact of bushfires. So as we all know, the Kangaroo Island bushfires were devastating. And so we have a lot of samples collected prior to the bushfires, which is in the green locations here, thanks to the EchidnaCSI being up and running for the past 3 years. But we also now have these sightings, these scats from both inside and outside of the fire affected areas. And we're actually seeing quite a dramatic change in their microbiomes from after the bushfires. So that's really interesting and very new stuff that we're working towards. Very, very lastly, sorry, I'll be quick. The third thing I wanted to very briefly talk about is cross-institutional collaborations we've had as well. So we work quite closely with both Perth Zoo and Taronga Zoo, and especially to do with their diet. So as you can see here, echidnas are fed this gruel-like substance, which absolutely is not what their diet is out in the wild, but you can't really just give them hundreds of thousands of ants every single day in a captive setting. So there's been a lot of work done to have a look at getting diets to make sure that the echidnas are as healthy as possible and to help with captive breeding as well. And so we've also been looking at the microbiome changes through that with the different diets. And because we've got the citizen science data, we can also compare that to the wild and how that all compares. So there's lots of layers to this, and it's been wonderful and amazing. And thank you. Sorry, I had to squeeze in the last bit. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
No, thanks so much, Taylor. That's fascinating. And like I said, so many different types of partnerships at different levels. So thanks very much, Tahlia. And again, everyone, if you've got lots of questions, it's great to see them coming up in the chats function. Please continue them and we'll draw them together. Now I'd like to just call on Cassie Thompson from the Natural Resources Commission in New South Wales. If you wanted to share your screen, Cassie.
There we go. Am I unmuted now? Does that look okay? Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. And yeah, I'm from the Natural Resources Commission. And today I'm going to be discussing the New South Wales Forest Monitoring and Improvement Program and the partnership that we've formed with the Australian Citizen Science Association to identify opportunities to connect citizen science to decision making for forest management and to create impact. So first, I just wanted to introduce the program and provide some background. The New South Wales Government established the Forest Monitoring and Improvement Program in 2019. The Premier tasked the program to provide independent and open evidence on forest management and performance. The program is statewide and cross-tenure, so it covers state forests, national parks, private native forests, and forested Crown land. New South Wales forests cover around 20 million hectares, with over half of that being within the regional forest agreement areas. The program responds to community concerns about the health of New South Wales forests and whether there is sufficient and reliable information available to track its health and productivity and the biodiversity it supports. The program will improve the evidence base for decision-making for forest management across tenures and strengthen the New South Wales Government's ability to strategically and adaptively manage forests over time. The program is overseen by a multi-agency steering committee, which includes all relevant forest and land management agencies. And the New South Wales Government has committed $7.2 million to the program over 4 years. Research organisations and community organisations will be partners in specific monitoring and research projects, for example, through citizen science and also university partnerships. Stakeholders will be invited to annual forums to jointly review the findings and the implications for forest management in New South Wales. The program sees an important role for citizen science in improving forest management. Citizen scientists can help professional researchers in many ways, but most commonly in data collection, data analysis, design, and extension. It provides the basis for an ongoing collection of data that can support forest management going forward. At last year's forum, people told us that we need to build a stronger evidence base to help manage risk in the face of a changing climate and changing fire regimes. The recent independent inquiry into the New South Wales bushfires recognised this need as well. recommending that greater investment in long-term monitoring, modelling and forecasting was needed to better understand and manage future risks. The program will generate the information base to understand whether forest management is effective in delivering healthy forests for biodiversity and the communities they support. It focuses on priority decision-making and community needs, and will use a wide range of existing data and expertise, both from inside and outside of New South Wales Government. Research organisations and community organisations are now partnering in the projects. The program also seeks to join up science across agencies, universities and the community, and this will drive greater efficiencies with the budget constraints of the program. It'll also facilitate better data sharing and consistent data collection. One of the key outcomes of the program is to harness and integrate citizen science data within the program. At previous community forums and submissions, the community told us that their data can be useful input into informing decision-making. Harnessing the passion and the commitment of the citizen science groups, we can deliver immediate benefits for the program with the extensive research data that's been collected to date. Longer-term outcomes could also be achieved for forest monitoring and management, particularly where we can co-partner or scale up existing government programs. But we weren't sure about the best way to go about this. So we called on the expertise of the Australian Citizen Science Association, ACSA, and partnered with them to design a citizen science strategy. The strategy identifies the best ways to harness citizen science to support the program. Oh, I can't quite read that bit, that's all right. The strategy has just been finalised, and it sets out an ambitious and powerful outcome to enhance the ability for citizen science data to contribute to and influence evidence-based decision-making. So how do we integrate citizen science into the program? Connection and impact are the key theme across our 3 objectives, as is forming collaborative partnerships. The program is investigating ways to integrate, use and scale up citizen science's contribution to forest management. We aim to identify and actively support citizen science initiatives that can help address the program's statewide evaluation questions, while facilitating public engagement and improving public confidence in the program. The endpoint is strengthening participation in evidence-based decision-making. This is a data-driven program. So firstly, we want to connect and integrate existing citizen science data with the program's forest monitoring, analysis and evaluation. We know it's important to build trust in the program among the citizen science community and create strong partnerships to facilitate data sharing and integration. Under this objective, the program will facilitate data capture and sharing to support recommendations for improved forest management. A key component will be engaging with data sharing repositories such as the ALA and also the Seed Citizen Science database, and ensuring that citizen data is accessible and readily usable. The next objective aims to scale up and invest in citizen science projects or tools. The aim is to use the existing passion and energy of the citizen science community to scale up by promoting, engaging and investing in existing and potentially new projects that will collect research data that aligns with the program's needs. We want to make sure that projects are collecting quality data that is accessible not only to the program, but for use in other programs and projects into the future. This component of the strategy will promote good data collection, storage and analysis in citizen science projects to ensure that citizen science data can create ongoing impact both within and beyond the program. The final objective is to strengthen and evaluate citizen science community's participation in evidence-based decision-making. The Commission will advise Government on the management of New South Wales forests by generating the evidence base that will form the basis for decision-making. The citizen science strategy will support the collection of research data by the citizen science community to contribute to this evidence base. By integrating citizen science to the program, we will provide an opportunity to engage and partner with citizen science groups for input into project reporting as well as forest management recommendations. We will share findings and create dialogue with the community at annual forums and look to create other opportunities to continue this dialogue with citizen science groups through workshops. Using these methods, we will improve the ability for citizen science to create impact for forest management. So where can citizen science provide input to the program? The program has 9 questions to focus investment and projects, as shown on the screen. Community forums and feedbacks on the program highlighted the importance of looking back and using the wealth of data and knowledge already collected in our forests over the last 20 years. As a result, the program is drawing on a range of historic data sets, including, for example, information collected in the previous comprehensive regional assessments in coastal New South Wales in the 1990s. Baseline projects are underway to source existing data to establish historical landscape baselines, indicators, and time series analysis for forest health, species occupancy, water quality and quantity, and carbon. As I mentioned earlier, as we move forward, the program will use a wide range of data and expertise being collected both inside and outside of the New South Wales Government. Research organisations, citizen science, and community organisations will be partners in these projects. So what sort of data can citizen science contribute? This is a recent study by Yaela Glumbig, who actually helped us with the strategy, and it identified that the majority of citizen science in Australia was centred around ecology and more specifically species observations. But the goals of these citizen science programs were wide, with the collection and contribution of scientific data being a major focus. We see roles for citizen science in the program for data collection, analysis, monitoring, design, and extension. With the help of ACSA, we are currently investigating the wealth of citizen science programs across the range of the 9 elements of the program. Given our huge scope and finite budget, we will prioritise to ensure that we can provide quality data for decision making and also provide value to citizen science projects. Given that there is already a wealth of programs in the ecology and biodiversity space, this is likely to be a key focus area. Data related to species presence can be used in species distribution and occupancy modelling and validation, which fits in well with our evaluation questions. So how can citizen scientists get involved? We're continuing our partnership with ACSA to call on their expertise to help us quickly navigate and connect with citizen science groups. Working with ACSA, we're developing approaches to help us prioritise projects to engage with as part of a pilot. Priority projects are likely to have quality data, visibility and accessibility, will have a wide engagement and spatial coverage. We'll start engaging with these priority projects and reaching out to project teams over the coming weeks. We will workshop ways to incorporate citizen science data into the baseline projects and beyond, identifying the best ways to facilitate data sharing and the use of citizen science data in the program. The aim is to then expand and scale up the pilot, taking on board any of the lessons learned. This could involve scaling up existing programs or creating new citizen science programs to collect the data required to inform forest management. We want to engage and workshop ways to incorporate data collection, analysis, monitoring, design and extension for the program with the citizen science community. We are looking forward to creating partnerships and engaging with the citizen science groups. We really see this program as an opportunity to promote the use of citizen science to create impact. It'll also provide the foundation for ongoing data collection to support forest management into the future. Just wanted to have a quick thank you to ACSA for all their assistance with the strategy and moving forward, particularly Erin Roger, Patrick Taggart and Yaela. And if anyone is interested in receiving updates on the Forest Monitoring Improvement Program, you can sign up to our mailing list. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Cassie. That's fantastic. And it has been a sort of wonderful partnership and relationship with the Commission as well. And we've really appreciated that. I really liked actually the way that you sort of talked about connecting with data too, not just sort of people. And I think one of the things, and it aligns with the sort of 10 principles of citizen science, is actually what is the research question. So that sort of diagram where you talked about those research questions was fantastic as well. I'd just like to introduce Annie Daly from the Australian Space Agency. So while we've had a lot of ecology, now we get a bit of space. So thanks, Annie.
Thanks so much, and give me a moment whilst I just start sharing my screen. Fabulous. So it is a little bit of a different approach from here. The Australian Space Agency is about almost 2.5 years old, or 2 years and 3 months old. We've got into the toddler years of a new organisation, and I have to say we're actually at that point now where I feel like we're ready to really engage a lot more. So this is a start of a conversation and a little bit about what we do and where we see opportunities in the future and how we go about doing our partnerships and engagements. I'll put the disclaimer up front is that we haven't engaged with citizen science just yet. We're quite keen to, and we're willing and open now to start seeing what projects we can work with the community on. So firstly, I'm Antoinette Daly. I'm an engineer, a water and environmental background, but have always been in long-term engagement, particularly on the outreach side of space for a very long time. And now one of the part of the leadership team for the Australian Space Agency. I'm based in Adelaide today, but we're based all around the country. So a little bit about us, because I think it's important to understand what we are. So many people think space, they think NASA or in the US, or they think the European Space Agency. We're actually an incredibly dynamic, pretty awesome group of about 30 to 40 people. And we have the bold objective or we'd like to say that we're the most industry focused agency. So it's realizing the important connection, particularly for government at the moment, to really tackle the economy, tackle jobs, but in a very exciting world of space, which we feel now is kind of like moved into 2.0, which is very much about the industry and that the public leading rather than perhaps large government organizations doing it. But the purpose there very much has transforming, growing, lifting the economy and seeing that line about inspiring and improving the lives of Australians. It's very clear that space has a way to impact on every single person in Australia. And it's not just about astronauts being in space, or that's really exciting, but also very much about the opportunity to improve our lives. And when you think about bushfires and you think about agriculture and farming, you should be thinking space too. I just wanted to say a little bit more about the organisation, and I'll get into a little bit about what we do. But we have very much a responsibility around civil space policy and strategy, and that's setting government's targets. It's not like this is an organisation that is, 30, 40 years old with very set systems. We're still working through, where we lead in policy and strategy. We definitely do all the coordination now of activities in the civil space area. We lead a lot of engagement, both internationally and domestically. We have legislation that is really important for us to do that responsibly and quickly. And also, very importantly there, to inspire the Australian community. And I like to tell people that we're very passionate about what we do and the values of the type of people and the types of projects we get involved with. We're willing to take risks because whilst we care about being very responsible and very much globally responsible, we will do cool things. We will take our passions to try and make changes in Australia and internationally. And space has got so many opportunities, and I'm putting this out there because citizen science has the opportunity to influence a lot of these areas. Position, navigation and timing, we're trying to work, so that little blue dot when you have your mobile phone open and you're trying to do a GPS location, and sometimes that dot jumps across the road because the accuracy is not quite there. What the government is doing is getting that accuracy down to across the whole of Australia and the maritime area to within 10 centimetres. Now 10 centimetre accuracy is pretty amazing. But we won't just stop there. In urban areas, that accuracy will get down to 3 centimetres. And I'm very excited about what that means for people in what they can design, develop, test. I have a grandmother that's got who's vision impaired, and this kind of technology could actually create mobility if she can know that one step across the road, she'll know exactly where there's a step. She can get a thing to say, actually, there's cars coming, don't cross the road. And I think that is some of the opportunities. Earth observation is such a growing area, and Australia is a leader, particularly with our Digital Earth Australia systems that are run out of Geoscience Australia. I remember working in a remote Indigenous community, working on dog abatement program, and we were using Earth observation and satellite technologies and the data that you can get to actually measure the impact of a program like that. And it's so good to be able to see and hold that kind of data and capability, and to be able to go, I've done this and I can see the impact. And, you know, some of these areas are huge scale. And so satellite technology can do that. There's a few other areas of opportunities. I'm so sorry, I've got my daughter here. So you can come in, please. Apologies, I'm single parenting today. So I do have a toddler that needs a bit of attention. But there's so many opportunities and areas for where we can engage and have the opportunities to really engage with citizens. I'm on a call now. Can you please come and do something? And I'll come right with you in 5 minutes, I promise. Sincerest apologies.
No problems at all.
You worked really hard to have them, you know, completely entertained by Peppa Pig, and it just didn't quite work today. I do want to talk a little bit about strategy and some of the larger activities that we put together, and then where I see some opportunities for citizen science to get involved with. So we worked really hard last year. We got our Advancing Space, the Civil Space Strategy. We went out to industry. We got a lot of people's input into that process, and we developed a strategy that would lead us for the next 10 years. And what it does is it's very much centered around partnerships, collaboration. We're not a huge agency. In order to be able to achieve the visions that we do want to achieve, we're going to have to be very strategic in our partnerships and to engage. I have the wonderful responsibility of doing inspiration, and as part of inspiring a nation is to come up with a strategy and approach. So we're still working on putting that strategy together. We're still working on what it means for Inspire. What data can underpin where we should focus our energy and our efforts, this is like the most exciting time, because you go through your entire careers and often things are already decided, and now we have this wonderful time where we can create those opportunities. So in the Inspire one, we kind of said for the last financial year, you know, we would set conditions and we'll start trying to engage with opportunity, but we're looking at trying to do partnerships. We're looking at how to determine which ones we should be achieving or which ones we should be focusing on. I know that we're trying to put a little bit of an Inspire plan together, and you know what, it is really tough to determine what things we should concentrate on. When you talk to the STEM community, the list of activities that people tell me we should absolutely be dealing with is a mile long. And I always go, all right, do I target the 4-year-olds? Do I target the 8-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, the 15-year-olds, the 20-year-olds? Actually, let's just start targeting the parents and, you know, working through that process very iteratively to try to determine where we can best gain the most opportunity in trying to develop that STEM pipeline. We're hoping to create 20,000 new jobs over the next 10 years. And that means we need an awful large number of people to be skilled up in these areas to take on those roles, which is why, you know, one of the programs that we have done under the Inspire pillar is to work with NASA on what we call the GLOBE program. This GLOBE program was only launched this financial year, so it's only in the first 3 months, and we're in such an early stage, but I will be definitely seeking the support of so many of you, and also the citizen science groups to get involved, because that is about recording, measuring, and being part of a global movement to actually monitor the environmental outcomes using satellite technologies and the data points of so many individuals across the world. But in Australia, we're making a potent focus to really do some of those programs in the schools, in scouting groups, and across the country. But we're 3 months into it, so it's still very early days. I just wanted to point out, you know, the first 2 years of any organisation's life is very much centred around, you know, developing our governance structures, and that, apologies, it's getting dark just as I'm talking to you guys. And we were very much concentrating on our industry partnerships. And we set up quite a lot of these partnerships in the early stages. I think we've got 16 statements of strategic intent. And we realized that we need the industry to come along, but we also have now got to that point where we realize that the Australian public is extremely thirsty to be inspired about space, which is why we're giving lots of thoughts to how we do it. If you're not familiar with our brand for the Australian Space Agency, we've got this wonderful brand that captures the Indigenous connection to make us, what makes us uniquely Australian in our location. And our brand is made up of 8 Indigenous constellations that also mimic what it looks like when you look from space down to Earth, the industrial lights that you might see, but equally what you look up when you on Australia, looking up into the skies and seeing the constellations and the stories. And so we're very interested and keen to work with Indigenous partners to show that connection between space and Australia's unique history. Some other projects that I just wanted to talk to you about because they're all very, very new. So these are very early stage projects. We're currently building in Lot 14 in Adelaide, Australia's first space discovery centre and the first public enabled mission control centre. This means that when you walk in as a member of the public, you can see Australia's mission control, you can see how it works, you can engage with it. And the wonderful opportunity is that it gives access to the public a lot more closer. So high schools can actually use the technology, the same technology that businesses are doing to send satellites up to be able to use it, engage it, and to use the same data and technologies. And then on the other side is to also have the discovery element about what really happens in space and the types of careers and activities that are occurring right here in Australia. So those ones are in early stages, and I can assure you from the Australian Space Discovery Centre, which I'm leading, we're going to be looking to do more hands-on partnerships with the outreach and the education sectors, but the nation more broadly. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but everybody's very excited about the fact that Australia has joined with NASA on its inspirational plan to return to the moon and go on to Mars. And that's a very exciting prospect for Australians. And one of those projects is very much to inspire nations through our Trailblazer program, which will be an exciting project that we hope Australia will get behind, that we can use groups like Citizen Science to actually implement projects. Whether it's a rover on the moon, or if it's satellite technologies or health warning systems on astronauts on the moon, we're wanting to find a way to get into the hearts and the homes of so many Australians to show them the opportunities that space has. If you can, 1 minute, this is my last video, so we're good for it. If you can indulge me for 2 seconds, we've created a few videos. This is just a 1 minute video because a lot of people don't realise how space impacts their everyday lives. So hopefully this will work.
Underneath it says, "Here men from the planet Earth for a set foot upon the moon."
Since taking that one giant leap, people have benefited from space. Many of the things we take for granted work because of space technology, from GPS location tracking and navigation, to forecasting climate and weather events, to improving how we connect and share information. Space tech has made our lives easier and safer. So now that we know what space technology does for us today, what will it do for us tomorrow? The Australian Space Agency, growing and transforming the Australian space industry.
Well, hopefully that was an inspiring note to leave you on. I think my key messages here is that the Australian Space Agency is at its early stages of development. We're open to partnerships. We're still working through how we will deliver some initiatives, and I'm happy to report back over time how we go about assessing and evaluating those programs. But we're definitely got our door open and very interested to hear the opportunities.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Annie, for that. And I hope everybody on the line takes that call to participate not only in the sort of upcoming, in the Globe program, but yeah. So thanks very much, Annie. Finally, we have Ali Makani from the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. Thanks, Annie.
Magnificent. That was quite a hard act to follow. I hope you're all seeing my screen very well. So from space and forests and echidnas to the National Environmental Science Program. I must admit, I am an ecologist, so bear with me. I haven't been time though. I've been about 20 years as a science communicator instead of doing real science itself, but I'm pretty excited tonight to present just a few of our 347 projects, many of which have a citizen science bent to them. So thank you to everybody who popped where their Indigenous nations and the land in which they are currently meeting from into the chat. That was really inspiring to see all around the country. And of course, the National Environmental Science Program does really value Indigenous research partnerships. So I am attempting to move my screen, and hopefully the second slide has come up here. Look, we are a long-term investment in Australian science. The current program is due to expire next year, but it was $145 million of investment in 6 research hubs, everything from Earth systems and science, of course, which we use those space satellites, and to clean air and urban landscapes, threatened species recovery hub, marine biodiversity, and the tropical water quality hub. We also have a few projects on emerging priorities, many of which have a component of citizen science in
Ali,
them.
we're only still seeing your first slide.
So we actually... Excellent. Okay, we'll try to move to the second.
Excellent, thanks.
So this one here, are you seeing the partnership cycle?
No, about NESP.
Wonderful. I'm one slide in front here at the moment, so I'm going to leave my partnership cycle slide up here and hope that it comes on through. There seems to be just a little bit of lag, but fortunately I'm quite able to talk without the slides. So the National Environmental Science Program, just to finish off the last slide, which you can currently see, has around about 800 online. I presume the thumbs up there, Stephanie, was moving to the partnership cycle. Perfect. Okay, so I just thought I'd like to touch base with you on the framework in which we work as a science partnerships organisation. So we have the current National Environmental Science Program, which is in its closeout phase. And as much as it's fantastic to build expectations and to make the future program great, it's just as important that we have core closeout principles for the current program. And today I would really like to go through 3 core examples that hold the heart of those sharing knowledge and experience, scaling and increasing impact, and moving on. As mentioned, I won't go into too much detail about the Future NESP program, but we are definitely in that mapping and planning governance structures phase. If you'd like to read more about the other projects other than the 3 that I showcased tonight, please jump onto our outcomes report. It has some glorious images, some beautiful video, and some fascinating stories from across our portfolio. So the first research that I'd really like to showcase is around crown of thorns starfish control. And it will be a magical mystery tour to see when this slide actually materialises. So I will continue to talk about crown of thorns. Oh, I have a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, so this is one of my favourite examples of partnerships. And look, the crown of thorns starfish affects the Great Barrier Reef, and we know how huge the Great Barrier Reef is, and we really couldn't do what we do without citizen science support. So, for example, the Tropical Water Quality Hub has really partnered with tourism operators, marine biologists, and Indigenous and traditional owners of the Great Barrier Reef, who are really acting as key crown of thorns starfish control. So the crown of thorns starfish, it's a native species, but it actually, because of eutrophication and other factors that impact on the reef, it actually is one of the biggest factors in hard coral loss. So I was really lucky enough to experience this in person and how the partnerships come about. So my family and I went around Australia a couple of years ago, and we took the kids out to the Great Barrier Reef. In those couple of hours that we were ensconced in this boat going out to the reef, there was this marine biologist on board who was explaining how the crown of thorns starfish can impact on the reef, and she was part of the Tropical Water Quality Hub. She was well supported by a traditional owner who was with her to help out in managing the crown of thorns starfish, and that was through dieting, and they do it ethically through the injection of like a vinegar and acetic acid into the crown of thorns starfish that they find. So not only do we have tour boats partnering with the marine scientists, partnering with the traditional owners, but we have this captive audience who has nothing to do for 2 hours but eat and listen about crown of thorns starfish. And there was a bit of fun going on as well, where the traditional owner was very competitive about the number of starfish that he'd caught, and he outdid the marine biologist 2-to-1. So that really shows that you can scale and increase impact. And I have changed my slides. It will come up, I promise. So sticking with the marine environment. So we've gone from the north of Australia and crown of thorns starfish, and I'd really like to take you down south now. And this ugly grumpy guy here is actually one of our most endangered species, and he is the red handfish. These occur in the Derwent, and the Marine Biodiversity Hub is really leading the research on this. And if you're interested in this research, actually, there's a fantastic poster called Code Red, which is free to anyone to order and download, and it's a great resource. And it was actually this resource, this poster that was produced. And sometimes we think of, collateral and posters as just nice to have. Well, this one was integral because a teacher in one of the schools in Hobart picked it up and showed her students. And the students actually, these were primary school students, they actually read the recovery plan that was developed, and they thought of ways that they could help out in the monitoring of this handfish. So urchins, which are obviously closely related to starfish, also degrade the reefs down the Derwent, which can impact on these critters. Marine biologists have gone out and collected egg masses through diving, and they've got these little glass rods that mimic the reefs, and the handfish can lay eggs on that. And so bringing it back to the students, the Seahorse World in Launceston has actually developed up, I think they had 17 egg masses, which is a lot. And the students from that school who, just happened to come across a poster have really gone to town, and they've now gone to that seahorse world, seen the fish, put little signs up. There's gorgeous artwork from the students, and so that really shows that investment and that passion in science can make its way through. Obviously, I have to move along, because my last component was really about moving on, and my slides have changed for me this time, which is very handy. And I really do want to make sure that I have time for this shout out, because as I said at the beginning, while making a partnership at the beginning and investing that time in a relationship, like what you might do at home, and you get engaged, and you've really got to make that time to have that marriage last. And this is an example of where that partnership can really outlast the science that's been invested in it. So this project here is right in the centre. It's the Kakadu Healthy Country Partnership, and it's actually been nominated for the Australian Museum's prestigious Eureka Awards just recently. So this project here really involved the scientists and the traditional owners and Microsoft to use ethical AI drone technology to go over where they'd sprayed for a weed called paragrass, and they were able to see where that spraying or burning was effective, and they were able to monitor that on an ongoing basis. And so we know that this partnership was successful because when the scientists walk away, the on-ground users are still using that technology to continue to help with their business and of looking after the environment. So one of the key outcomes from this was that they were able to increase the amount of magpie geese in one wetland. So a big shout out to the CSIRO team who were involved in that. And there is a glorious video. I'm not going to meld with technology to pop that through, but please do watch it in your own time, because it's a fantastic fly through. I will end there just with a short note to say that please do keep in touch with us. We do have, that is 3 out of our 347 projects. We have a newsletter called NESP News. It's better than New Scientist. So subscribe to that, and you can keep up to date with all the latest science. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Ali. That's really fascinating. And I think it's really interesting to see all the different types of partnerships and the science outcomes, that it's really, partnerships are not just scientists, it's citizens, communities, and everyone as well. We're running a little bit over time, I must admit, but we do still have time for questions. I know, Alice, I don't know if you've seen any specific, I know people have been answering questions as we sort of go through, but there were any that stood out for you, Alice, that you'd like perhaps one of our speakers to answer?
Yeah, I think, thanks so much, everybody. There's been some great answers already. I know Tahlia has been answering in the chat, and Cassie, but maybe I'll reframe one of the questions that was given to Tahlia and ask everybody if you could answer this question or share your perspectives. So somebody asked about how you feed back results to participants in citizen science projects. So for those of you who are involved in citizen science, could you share some of the ways that you do this or you think would be good ways to do this in the future?
Brilliant. Tahlia, you've answered the question. I saw you answer it, but have another go.
Yeah, I did answer it briefly in the chat, but yes, obviously feedback is a very important part of citizen science. If they're giving us their time and their efforts to provide us with data that is going to help our science, and the least we can do is report back to them what we're doing with it. So as I said in the chat, as people download the EchidnaCSI app, we take email addresses, and so we have a resource to be able to communicate with people that way. So we send out reasonably regular e-newsletters. We've been doing it every 2 months. And so that's to update not just about what is happening with the data, but is what's happening in the general project. When we get new students coming in and when they submit their thesis and like all those sorts of things. So yeah, we try to communicate as much as possible. And we also have quite a big social media presence. So we communicate with our people through that as well.
Excellent. Anybody else?
We haven't really gotten to that point yet on our project. Obviously, we're still in that sort of early strategy phase, but we're obviously going to be incorporating feedback to the community through our annual forums. And we're also hoping to provide feedback in a number of other ways along the way. So yeah, watch this space.
Brilliant.
I think there was another great question that might be particularly for Annie. So Annie, I think there's a lot of people who are very keen to see some Australian Space Agency and citizen science combinations. So you've got some very keen people in the chat. And Michelle asked whether you had thought as an organisation or an association of partnering with any current Australian astronomy citizen science projects, and there are a number, one of which is AstroQuest.
Great, and thank you. I'm not able to keep up with all the messages, so I will do my best, but I'm more than happy for people to ping me on LinkedIn or equivalent after this talk. We haven't, I'm going to be honest, we're 2 years old means that we've just been setting ourselves up in our governance structures that I haven't been able to yet to achieve what I want to achieve. But the option is now open. I feel like we are ready. We're writing our inspiration plan. This is the best time to tell us where we should be focusing our efforts. And citizen science has always been something I've been interested in. I've been in science and engineering, and I've attended lots of citizen science events in the past, but have never been on the other side to actually enable projects to occur. So if you've got a good project that you think we can support or ideas, I'm very open and very keen to hear. And have I dealt with the astronomy groups? No, I haven't. It's not to say that we wouldn't. I tend to leave CSIRO to do more on the astronomy side of things, whereas we tend to focus on what I call the business side. Astronomy is very much about a particular field, whereas we tend to deal a lot more with satellite technologies and capabilities like that. But it doesn't stop me, and I'm always willing to see where there's opportunities.
Thanks very much. We've got lots of actually questions at the last minute. What we actually might do, I know we've sort of extended beyond the time and everybody probably either had dinner or waiting to have dinner. We're happy to take some of those questions as well and share them with the presenters. I'm going on their behalf here, and maybe Stephen get back to you if you had any specific questions as well. I just wanted to have one last share of my screen, sorry, just let you know of what's coming up and what's actually there as well. Hopefully in the next few days, we'll have up some other additional resources associated with this particular session. Sam Illingworth talking about 10 principles of citizen science, something around social network analysis, and also Libby Hepburn, who's online here, and Yura Wen talking about open science as well and how you create partnerships through community of practice. Also do like to do a shout out for everyone to sort of join our next session. This has been a fantastic month of October for citizen science, and Yala, Jasmine and Michelle will be talking there as well. So one last thing, again, just to thank you again, everyone, for attending this. We've had, over 60 odd people, which is fantastic for this time of month, and, Zoom and all those sorts of things, people may be getting part of that. But also like to thank our sponsors as well that have helped make this possible. But most of all, you and our speakers as well for their wonderful presentations and really some great insights around partnerships and connections. So I'm happy to stay online, and there's a number of management committee members online here if people want to have a bit of a chat afterwards. But otherwise, thanks everyone, both speakers and participants, and see you next week.